नतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितमेन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। वंशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्ते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So the subject of śaraṇāgati or surrender, when we study from the perspective of Bhagavad Gita, it becomes very profound, at the same time very practical. I remember one devotee was mentioning, asking the rhetoric question that who is the master of the living entity? जीव के पति कौन है? So yes, even the Prakriti Swami is Krishna, but when we study from the realistic perspective, Jiva or living entity, he or she is bound by the three modes of material nature, and everyone has particular disposition, and that particular disposition is called as karma. Therefore, the pati of the living entity is karma on a day-to-day basis. Our color, our height, our voice, our food habits, our birth, our parents, our surrounding, right? It is not an accidental. Whether you are a Nastik or Astik, both do not believe in an accident. Even the so-called the explosion has explained by the scientific people, apparently in a more scientific way only, right? So there is a logic, there is a system. So karma, we see that certain habits, certain attitudes, certain dispositions, they stay with us. Therefore, what does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? He says about how to dowtail them. Rather than being bound by them, how to dowtail them so that our conditioning becomes the tool for our liberation. And Pandavas are the best example of that. And this devotee was mentioning that when the jiva is bound by karma, karma is the pati. If you are only doubting your propensity according to your karma, but the Parapati Krishna is not there, Lord Hari is not there. The question was raised, just like in the Ras Leela, the Parakiya Bhava was there for the gopis. What is the Parakiya Bhava for the living entity? The living entity's Parakiya Bhava is to be loyal to his disposition, dowtel one's propensity, and at the same time worship Krishna. Even after being with the Supreme Lord Krishna in Vrindavan, the gopis were sent back by Krishna, back to their family place. If you read the Bhagavatam, whether it is Brahman Patni, whether it is gopis, whether it is Pandavas, Krishna did not allow anybody to disrupt the social order. right? At the same time developed deep affection for him. So therefore the Pandavas, when we study the Pandavas, the beauty of Pandavas' life is they harmonize their disposition along with their devotion. Like we are going to celebrate Bhima Nirjala Ekadashi. Right? When you take the story of Bhima, the beauty of Bhima's life, Bhima had no confusion in regards to following the orders of Krishna. Because Krishna's order in those particular time frame, just before the battle of Kurukshetra and also during the battle, there is a saying in our South Indian language, Rogi baisiddu halu anna, vaidya heliddu halu anna. The medical doctor and the patient both are desiring and ordering the same kind of food, dahi baat. So when Krishna tried everything to stop the war, even Bhima for that matter, requested Krishna to stop this war, but when the Duryodhanan party did not agree, then what is the disposition of Bhima? He was waiting for so long. Whether it is killing Dronacharya, whether it is killing Dushyasan, whether it is killing Jarasandha, right? It was easier for Bhima to surrender his action. Whatever Krishna says, I will do, because that is what he is good at. So his śaraṇāgati and his disposition became harmonized. Another great character amongst the Pandavas is Kunti Mata. Now Kunti Devi, interesting story is there in connection to Bhima only, when they were in incognito, not the incognito, the second one. Incognito means after the Lakshagraha incident where they were about to be burned, they protected themselves. They were going around. Eventually they came to the place in a house of a Brahmana and they stayed there, and Kunti overheard the family discussing about who will be sent to be a sacrificial lamb to Bakasura in Ekachakra. And the interesting part in the Mahabharata, all of them are choosing to go themselves. The Brahman is saying why I should go, the wife is saying why she should go, the daughter is saying why she should go, the son is saying why he should go. Seeing their fascinating discussion, Kunti comes to the Brahmana Patni, discusses with her, discusses with that Brahmana, and then she decides, I will send my son. Brahmana did not know who these people were, what is their background. He said, how can I do this? It is better to give up my life. I would prefer committing suicide rather than committing this grave offense of sending my Athithi as the Bali for Bakasur. That is not possible. Kunti said, don't worry. I have 5 sons. I can send one of them. And not only I can send one of them, I have complete confidence in his parakram, in his valor, in his power. And then she convinces that person. She tells Bhima, when Yudhishthira Maharaj comes to know, Yudhishthira Maharaj questions her, how could you do this? Because we are waiting for justice and Bhima is one of the most important part in our life. How could you do this? And what is Kunti's answer? Kunti's answer was not only based upon sacrificing her son for a good cause. She says that, but she had a confidence. She had that Atma Vishwas. So Atma Vishwas is born out of precedent. It is born out of experiences. Whether it was his birth, and she told this to Yudhishthira Maharaj, when my son was born, Bhima, there was a roar of a lion and the baby fell from her hand. And nothing happened to Bhima. In fact, when the child fell on the rock, on the boulder, the rock became completely powdered. So Kunti had seen the poisoning of Bhima, Kunti had seen killing of Hidimba, right? Kunti had seen how the poison turned into Amrit. So there was a precedent of Bhima's character, therefore there was a confidence. Atma Vishwas is born out of experiences. And along with that experience, along with that Vishwasa, there is Shraddha also. Shraddha in God, Shraddha in Krishna. They go hand in hand. Right? Tasma Sarveshu Kaleshu Ma Manusmara Yuddhacha. That is one of the most profound concept presented by Krishna himself. There is Sangarsha, the human endeavor, and there is also effort. So she told Yudhishthira Maharaj, I have full confidence. Nothing will happen to him. He will come back victorious. And therefore she had told a family member not to convey to anybody about sending Bhima to the forest. And certainly what Bhima did, he went to the forest. He ate everything what was sent to that Bakasur Rakshasa. And Bhima was challenging him, screaming at him. And Bakasur, hearing the roar of Bhima, came to attack. And Bhima easily destroyed him. Alright? So when we study Pandava's life, it is not simply Shraddha of helplessness. The Shraddha of helplessness is the journey when they also put an effort. Another interesting story, Yudhishthira Maharaj. Right? When Pandavas were living in the forest, maybe it was 9 years, 10 years they had completed. Balramji, Satyaki, Kritavarma, they were not very happy. They said this is not fair. The Pandavas have lived in the forest for a long time. It is such a difficult journey, difficult path, challenges. And why they should live in the forest? They should come and stay with us. In this discussion, Krishna did not take active part. They insisted Krishna to come. So Balramji, Satyaki and Kritavarma, they come to meet the Pandavas in one of the forest. When they come, what do? Satyaki and Balramji offer something where everybody would be considered to be, that is the greatest of the benediction. Right? The great Balramji, the Param Guru, is inviting Yudhishthira Maharaj to come and stay in Dwarka. He will offer them the palace. He will offer them all the resources. They'll be in the company of Krishna and the Yadavas. Right? Now that cannot be greater compliment, mercy, magnanimity, whatever you want to call. Who will not accept it? Right? Without being invited by Krishna, in the modern world, people abruptly give up everything and go to Vrindavan. Sometimes causing a lot of disruption because that paripakvata, that maturity is non-existent. Right? It is born out of sentiments. Sometimes it lacks logic. Now, what do you expect Yudhishthira Maharaj to answer this question? Yudhishthira Maharaj was not even tempted slightly. He told Balramji, my dear Balram, my dear Satyaki, this is not possible. I am bound by my own activities. I need to complete my vanvas. I need to complete my incognito. I will fight for my justice. If they do not agree, right, peacefully, then we will fight for it. But I cannot come and stay in Dwarka like this. And fortunately, Krishna was also there. He was a witness. He did not speak. He was there, standing, sitting there, watching their conversation, hearing their conversation. When Yudhishthira Maharaj spoke this, what did Krishna say? Krishna told Satyaki and Balramji, I told you he will not accept it. right? Because one of the most endearing quality of Sri Krishna, he does not disrupt the social order. If you carefully study the Bhagavatam, the greatest of the devotees, gopis, leaving their home, there was naturally, it created disturbance. Suddenly, from nowhere in the middle of the night, young girls in Vrindavan 5,000 years ago, walking away from their family members, some were married girls, some were cared by their parents, some were taking care of their children. Suddenly in the middle of night, you're walking away. It but naturally creates great disturbance. Even if somebody does in the biggest cities like New York and Los Angeles, even with the modern civilization, the parents will ask this question, why now in this middle of the night? And there are consequences for that. But when gopis came back to Vrindavan, what do you see? There was not even slightest disturbance created by the family member, as if the gopis had not gone to meet with Krishna. Nobody spoke anything. What does this indicate? It indicates, in first of all, this did not happen on a mundane platform. It was a mundane platform, it has to create a disturbance, as simple as that. If there is an action, there has to be consequences. There were absolutely no consequences. Nobody was disturbed by that. Because Krishna did not want disruption. Gopis were desperate to be with Krishna in their heart. And therefore, when Krishna told them, they were feeling separation from Krishna, but they were not suffocated by their duty. They also, in one sense, accepted, they are transcendental, no doubt, but they also submitted to the laws of life. Karmapati. They had their karmapati, their husbands were there, but Krishna was a parapati. Right? Yudhishthira Maharaj. You take any example. Kunti Devi, her śaraṇāgati and her vishwas, the confidence in her son's capacity and shraddha in her devotion was together only. Therefore she sent, and naturally Bhima became victorious. He came back, right? And therefore when we study the qualities of the Pandavas, whether it is Kunti, whether it is Draupadi, whether it is Yudhishthira Maharaj, whether it is Nakul Sahadev, or for that matter Arjuna, they symbolize the same principle, no breaking the social laws. Right? Not even thinking I need to set an example for the society. This is how I need to operate to grow in life. Therefore, when we study the story of Draupadi, like when we talk about actual śaraṇāgati, what is śaraṇāgati? Then the story of Draupadi during her Vastra Harana becomes one of the most profound story. Right? Those who have the Mahabharata, the original, along with the shlokas, when you read that part of the story from the beginning of Vidura coming to Hastina, to Indraprastha, inviting the Pandavas, or if you want to go before that also, where Duryodhan, Shakuni come back from Indraprastha after the Rajasuya sacrifice, staying for some more time. When they come back, Duryodhan has a jaundice, almost like a jaundice. And Dhritarashtra says, I have provided so much for you, why are you so sickly? And Duryodhan says, my dear father, you know what? He said, satisfaction is the enemy of the progress. You are asking me to be satisfied? I cannot see the growth of the Pandavas. And that is how he schemes along with Shakuni for the gambling match. And after Pandavas losing everything, we know that Pandavas are losing everything. Eventually they lost Means Yudhishthira Maharaj lost all his property, lost himself, lost all his brothers, and Shakuni raised this question to him. He said, my dear Yudhishthir, why not stake your wife on the gambling match? Yudhishthira Maharaj objected for it. Right? But he said, you cannot do like that. You cannot ask this. He was angry, he was upset, but he did not walk away from the gambling match. Unlike Pushkara and Nala Maharaj's gambling, Pushkara did say this to Nala to put his wife on stake, but he would not do that. But when Yudhishthira Maharaj was asked by Shakuni, Yudhishthira was upset, angry, but he chose to do that not because, yes, from a human perspective, that was the greatest crime anybody could create. It doesn't matter whether you are Yudhishthira or you are somebody else. But Yudhishthira being Dharmaraja, how can he do that? That's a different story. So Yudhishthira Maharaj actually gambled Draupadi and lost her in the gambling match. And then Duryodhana told Pratikami, one of his servant, to fetch Draupadi, asking her, tell her to come down and be maid servant in Hastinapur. Let her do all kinds of ordinary chore. Because since she has lost, she has to come down. When Pratikami came with great fear, he knew the power of Draupadi. But what can he do? Because he is mastered by Duryodhana. Even though you know it is wrong, but if you do not have the capacity to stand against your master, he will slaughter, he will butcher. Right? We see that when an ordinary worker, he understands his political master is doing biggest blunder, but he cannot do anything. He is helpless. It is not that truth is not understood, but to stand by truth is not easy. Whether it is 5,000 years ago or now also. Imagine the recent marriage, all the opposing elements, including the greatest of the Hindu leader, was in the marriage. Not very pleasing to the ordinary, dharmic people. Right? So here, Pratikami, he comes and confesses to Draupadi what he is doing is not right, but you have to come down. Now it is not about Pratikami, it is not about Duryodhana, we are discussing about Draupadi. And the beauty of Draupadi, she asked this question to Pratikami. Beautiful. She said, ask the elders in the assembly. I would not do anything unless agreed upon by the elders. If it is dharmic and it has to be implemented. So my question to the elders is, before putting me in the dais, did Yudhishthira Maharaj lose himself? If he has become slave himself, a slave does not own anything according to the laws. Right? The slavery was not there during the Pandavas' time. So therefore it was much more heinous, where Duryodhana made Pandavas not servants, because servants have independence, they have their own family. They may work for their boss, but they have their own family. But a slave does not have anything. Right? There is no particular word in the Dharma Shastra for slavery. Dasatva is not slavery. They have marriage, they have family members. Everybody is there. For a slave, you don't have it. You can study properly. But the concept is there. The psychology is there. Therefore, when she asked this question, ask the elder whether did he lose himself first or did he lose me? Pratikami came down. And interestingly, this was also proclaimed by Vidura. Vidura was not Pratikami, he was the Mahamantri. Because he was the Mahamantri, he had the power of speech. He did not have the power of weapons. If he had the power of weapons for speaking those obnoxious words by Duryodhan, he would have cut off his tongue. And those who had the power, they were not speaking anything. Dronacharya, Kripacharya, Bhishma Dev, all the Pandavas were completely silent. Tears were rolling from their eyes, but they did not say anything. But Vidura raised this question: how is it possible when Yudhishthira has already lost himself? How can he stake? Therefore, this whole wager becomes illegal, morally corrupt, legally incorrect, dharmically also wrong. He had already raised this question. So when Draupadi asked this question, Pratikami came down, he asked this question to Yudhishthir, no answer. Everybody chose to shut their mouth. Imagine what an embarrassment. It happened 5,000 years ago. When people get disturbed, how can this happen? Yes, this happens because, this happens because when the prana in the living entity is lost. Therefore, mukti is not very easy. Religion is very easy to practice, but practicing liberation, devotion, that exclusive affection for Krishna, dharma, is very difficult. It is very easy to perform a compromised religious, rituals, very easy. Right? When Draupadi raised this question, nobody had answered that question. Just that part of Draupadi Vastraharan, that itself can become 21 episodes in the Mahabharata, if somebody wants to do. Much more dramatized, very powerful, devotional. So when nobody answered, then Duryodhan said, ask her to come down and ask this question in the assembly itself. Pratikami again he failed. Then Duryodhan said, bring her down, however you want to bring her down. And Dushasan comes there. And they speak so obnoxiously. Right? They were so intoxicated by so-called victory. They were not people of class. Right? Even if you are victorious, you are celebrated, like somebody was mentioning in 1998, when Brazil in their own country lost to Germany 7-1. It was a very humiliating defeat. In the middle of the game, in the half time, the German coach told, you can score goal as much as you want, but do not make your celebration too visible. Right? Because it is heartbroken. Even on the sports ground, the victorious party and especially Germans were told by their coach in Brazil not to do this. Right? But these people were classless. They were less than the animals. Right? The tiger will not attack you just for the sake of attacking. And therefore people go to the safari. It is walking by closely. If you follow certain rule, it does not attack you. But Duryodhan, Dushasan, Shakuni, Karna, they were celebrating narcissistically. They had become Vikrut people. And Draupadi comes down. Right? She raised that question. She wanted to practice dharma. She wanted to practice respect. She wanted to understand legally, ethically. And when Dushasan came to Draupadi, the interesting part, as he touched her hair, Vyasadeva in the Mahabharata, what does he say? Instantly she remembered Krishna. It is not that she remembered Krishna later. Her śaraṇāgati became intensified. It was not abrupt. It was not sudden. It was organic, and it was a journey from becoming surrendered to be more intensely surrendered. Right now here she surrendered to Krishna, but she was wise in raising this question in the assembly. Nobody answered. Yudhishthira Maharaj could not speak. She came to Bhishma Dev and she asked this question, my dear Tat, my dear grandfather, what is it? Did my husband lose first and then he stake me in the gambling? Because once somebody is a slave, then he cannot own anything. Therefore, Draupadi is freed. And what did unfortunately Bhishma Dev do? If you study this part to understand what is the actual empowerment, Vidur was empowering Draupadi. The concept of empowering is not that Vidur is empowering, means he is making her. He is simply making Kurus discover the realities of life, the laws of life. He is not making the law. He is simply spelling out the law. That no living entity, for whatever reason, in whatever condition, in whatever relationship, the living entity will submit because of love and affection. And that is very liberating. When somebody surrendered to Krishna, it is not because the living entity does not have the choice. Because living entity chooses to surrender. That is śaraṇāgati. śaraṇāgati is not forced upon. It has to be prachodayat. It is inspiration. It is natural. And Draupadi had that natural śaraṇāgati while maintaining her own buddhi. And what did Bhishma Dev do? Unfortunately, Bhishma Dev brought the cultural reference point more than the constitutional identity of the jiva. What Vidur presented is most protective for all the living entities. Whether Draupadi is somebody's wife or not, still she is an independent living entity having a separate relationship with Krishna. But what Bhishma Dev said, he had his own reason, not wrong reason. He said, at all condition of life, wife always remains under the husband. And that is what they caught. And they tried to disrobe Draupadi. And they miserably failed. Why did they fail? Because Draupadi, while maintaining her beautiful character, trying to ask support from these people to stand for her, nobody stood legally, morally, spiritually, socially, from any perspective. They could not stand, doing their role, but she did not give up her relationship. And then Dushasan tried to disrobe her. And what did she do? Her śaraṇāgati became intensified. Without cancelling any of these relationships, Draupadi simply intensified her connection to Krishna. And what did Krishna do? He sent her limitless, infinite cloth. When there is confidence and Shraddha, resources become infinite. They are not limited. Like one time Prabhupada said, money is everywhere, Lakshmi is everywhere. You need to know how to catch it. Resources to serve are everywhere. This world, the human spirit, the Shastric understanding, what does it? It talks about abundance. When Kunti Devi, she talks about abundance in the Prakriti because there is a glance of the Lord. There is a Drishtipad. Yada yadai dharmasya glani. Imagine, because this world is significant, it is an important place. Otherwise, why in the world Sri Krishna says in the Gita, Avatara hi asankyanam in the Bhagavatam. Yada yadai dharmasya glani. Whenever there is dharma glani, I do come to re-establish dharma. What is the abundance? Resources are abundance, no doubt. and there are facilities to have a resourceful, abundant realization even though there are less resources. One is there is a samriddhi, prosperity, but when there is no prosperity, there is a prosperity of consciousness. Right? One soldier, one Indian soldier, one who fought many combat wars, a Christian, born here, joined the army, his father was also army officer. He made the whole concept of law of karma, that second chapter of Bhagavad Gita theory, is so profound. He said, कर्म ही फल है, कर्म से फल नहीं आती है. It is not that is a lower understanding. ये कर्म करने से फल मिलेगा. But a higher understanding, karma itself is a fruit. And therefore, why does the Bhagavatam say the sannyasi and the yodha, they have the same destination? Because of the spirit. कि मरना ही, यानी कि कर्म करना ही फल है, उनके लिए मरना ही फल है. मरने के लिए नहीं जाते, जीतने के लिए जाते हैं. लेकिन मरने से वो ये नहीं सोचते कि अरे विषाद नहीं है. इसलिए somebody dies on the battlefield, we don't call as durmarana, we call it as a veera marana. वीर गति को प्राप्त कर लिया. Imagine, कर्म ही फल है. What a profound. And where do you can take this? When Krishna met the gopis, and at some point of time he disappeared from the gopis. And then when they met with each other, then there was a beautiful discussion asking Krishna, why did you leave us? And Krishna gave 3 reasons. Ungrateful, self-satisfied people, and then somebody who is totally indifferent to everything. He said, they do not reciprocate. Then what did Krishna say? But gopis, I do not belong to these categories. I am not an ungrateful person. I am not like a business people. You do, I do it. He said, the only reason I stayed away from you, to understand the glory of your devotion, to experience the glory of your devotion. And what did Krishna tell the gopis? Very profound. He said, be satisfied with your own devotion, gopis, because I cannot repay what you have done for me. Karma hi phal hai. In an ordinary sense, karma hi phal hai. In the language of the Rasika, the Bhagavatam language, na pareham. He said, even if I have the lifetime of Lord Brahma, I cannot repay. Therefore, bhakti, when there is a concept of benefit, because I did this and therefore I got this, I did this, therefore Krishna made me famous. While speaking devotional mercy, we are some other bringing the mindset of karma kanda. And when that does not happen consciously or unconsciously, there is a question mark. Why, Krishna, you did like this? Right? Karma hi phal hai. Therefore, what did Yudhishthira Maharaj say? Yudhishthira Maharaj said, I act because I have to act. मैं कार्य करता हूं क्योंकि कार्य करना होगा. And Draupadi is the most illuminating personality in this story, where she did everything at her disposal, courageous, asking right questions, respecting elders, at the same time intensifying her śaraṇāgati. Dushasan failed, because how can a finite power defeat the infinite faith? असीमित श्रद्धा के सामने सीमित मनुष्य प्रयत्न पूर्णतया नष्ट हो जाता है. Dushasan fell down there. Draupadi does not stop. She come to Bhishma Dev again, raising the same question about what she went through. Right? She asks, my dear Bhishma Dev, my dear Tat, where is Dharma? Bhishma Dev had tears in his eyes. He said, my dear Draupadi, what can I say? Even in this condition of your life, you are not willing to give up the practice of dharma, the understanding of dharma. ये तो श्लाघनीय है. This is प्रशंसनीय है. Right? The courageous bhakti is not based upon what I want to feel, what I feel to do. Right? Oh, I want to give up everything, I want to do this. It doesn't work like that. The sentiments of the living entities are born out of different moods. Like in the Jyotish Shastra, the moon planet is the planet of feeling. Right? The feeling planet is one of the most fast moving planet. Very fascinating philosophically also. It only stays for 2.5 days compared to the planet of justice, which takes 2.5 years in one place. 2.5 दिन और 2.5 साल कितना बड़ा अंतर है. How far, the distinction between the two. Unfortunately, in this modern world, we operate based upon feeling rather than satya. I felt, therefore I went. I felt, therefore I stopped. Driven by hypernated moon, not the stable moon, which comes in connection with Krishna. Krishna Chandra, he is from the moon dynasty. Again Draupadi came, she asked this question to Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev said, what can I say? In this condition also, my dear Draupadi, you are willing to ask this question. And then Bhishma Dev told her, he said, my dear Draupadi, this is the satya, katu satya of this world. If you want to survive, if you want to grow, dharma will be defined by those people who have the power. जिसके पास शक्ति है वही डिफाइन करेगा धर्म क्या है. And today they are defining what is dharma, Draupadi. Dushyasan, Shakuni, Karna and Duryodhana. That was the turning point for the Pandavas also. Now they had 3 beautiful triangles in their life. They were already dharmic. Their Swadharma, there is their Apadharma, and their Swarupa Dharma, being servant and lover of Krishna, that was already there. Along with being dharmic and bhakta, they also chose to become Shaktishalis, powerful. Right? Like somebody was asking this question. Why there is such a distinction, why we celebrate when somebody from America becomes a devotee. He is also living entity. Somebody living in Myanmar is also living entity. Because the power defines credibility. Right? The recognition of that country with resources, power, when you do something there, that is the nature of the world. That is how you have to do, unfortunately. Right? You have to preach here, you have to do something here also. But recognition, when you speak in English, when you are English educated, when you do have some higher degree, right? What happens? That becomes a news. And Pandavas were as innocent as the gopis of Vrindavan up until this story. But because they were from royal family, just close to Vrindavan, but in Hastinapur, along with their softest of devotion, it is there. There are hundreds of stories where Pandavas exhibited their teary affection to Krishna. When Jarasan had to be defeated in the Rajasuya sacrifice, just before the Rajasuya sacrifice, Yudhishthira Maharaj invited Krishna from Dwarka. He wrote a beautiful letter. And meanwhile, the kings had written their letters also about Jarasandha wanted to perform human sacrifice, and human means they were not humans ordinary, they were all rajas, they were all kings, and he had captured them and he wanted to kill all of them. Bali त्याग करना चाहते थे, उनको बलि पे चढ़ाना चाहते थे, and that is how they send a representative. And then the Yadavas wanted to fight, then Krishna said wait, and meanwhile the letter comes from Yudhishthira Maharaj. Beautiful letter he wrote, affectionate letter. If you read in the Mahabharata, putting trust in Krishna for his fair observation and critical analysis. Yudhishthira wrote in that letter, my dear Krishna, if I ask those who love me, out of affection they will agree. If I ask those people who do not like me, they will give all the reason why I should not perform Rajasuya. But you, Krishna, you are not attached. You do not have a cognitive bias. This is a term in psychology. You are not biased. You will give me a pure, unadulterated statement what I should do and what I should not do. The letter made Krishna come to Hastinapur. And Krishna gave the entire history of Bharatavarsha to Yudhishthira Maharaj and spoke the life of Jarasandha. And he said, we should not wage a war against Jarasandha, we should go as beggar, begging for Yuddha Bhiksha. And who will beg? Krishna will beg. When Yudhishthira Maharaj heard that Krishna is going to beg again, he was overwhelmed. One commentator writes, Yudhishthira Maharaj remembered how Lord Hari became Vamana and begged from Bali Maharaj. Begging is not easy. It requires great humility, and especially those Brahmanas who are highly evolved, educated, cultured. For them begging is extremely humbling, but that is how they survived their life. Bhavati bhiksham dehi. And Krishna chose to become a beggar. He said, I will beg. And he begged from Jarasandha. The expression of Yudhishthira's devotion is marvelous. When Krishna saw Arjuna fighting that Jayadratha, killing Jayadratha, destroying, how Krishna was fascinated by the Pandavas. How Sri Krishna would not sleep because Arjuna had taken the vow. And Nakul and Sahadev, one may say, array, what? Their role is not there only. And that is the beauty. Even though they are the Pandavas, their contentment, their confidence in their brothers, they're completely not, they're not blind, they are also valorous, they're also adventurous, but they're absolutely free from any jealous or envy. How Vyasadeva presents this character of the five Pandavas is fascinating. Right? So Draupadi, by exhibiting that quality, showing that courage, not breaking any of the relationship, and nobody had to tell her, hey Draupadi, you should stay back with your husbands. Krishna told the Gopis, Krishna told the Brahman Patnis, and they did it, having Krishna in their heart. And Draupadi was not even told by Krishna, and her condition, in one sense, the Gopis had no bad relationship with their husbands. The Brahman Patnis were only eager to give Krishna food. They were all, devout, wives, assisting their husbands in their yagyas. And for Draupadi, there was all the reason to be angry, to be upset, to be hurt, to feel betrayed by their husband. Not only they were watching she being disrobed, they were responsible for putting Draupadi in the gambling match. Not only that, Yudhishthira Maharaj, here in the Mahabharata, he describes the beauty of his wife in the public place. Every part of her body is described to tell Kauravas how valuable I am offering this wager. So imagine that Draupadi, certainly there was no question of forgiving the Pandavas for that crime. She did not raise this issue. What she did, time to time, she gave them good dose. Right? She would flare up, especially Yudhishthir Maharaj, not so much Arjuna, and sometime Bhima, because when he would not immediately agree to fulfill certain dharmic desires of Draupadi, when Draupadi told Bhima to take action against Kichak, and Bhima said, no, let us wait for some more days. Let us complete these vows. And Draupadi asked, she was very upset, very angry. He said, do you want to wait for these vows, or you want to see a dead body of Draupadi? She knew how to blackmail for the right reason. And Bhima, did this task of killing Kichaka where nobody got to know. So therefore the Pandavas, the way they live life, how they respond to life, their responding to the life is not based on imaginary understanding of spirituality. It is substantial, it is real, it is logical, it is driven by buddhi, it is driven by proper understanding. So all that interaction which they had to do with the world is done as a wise people. And what differentiates them from being greater than the wise people is wiseness did not destroy their nishpapta, their innocence. The soft devotion towards Krishna. That great Kunti, she gave her talk to Krishna. What a talk she gave about how Yudhishthira has to fight on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And that same Kunti Maharani, when you see her confidence, her power of speech, her ability to communicate to her son through Krishna, choosing to stay in Hastinapur in the midst of all the damaging people, not going with Draupadi. That is also master stroke. I don't want to disturb their family. Let Draupadi have complete control over my sons. I will not interfere into their life. Psychologically, socially, financially, politically, everything, Kunti Maharani was profoundly aware, full of wisdom. At the same time, that same Kunti Maharani, after the battle of Kurukshetra was over, Yudhishthira Maharaj was coronated. Krishna is riding back on his chariot driver, and her prayers, Kunti's prayers in the Srimad Bhagavatam, are profound, at the same time full of nishpapata, full of innocence. Right? That is the heart of Kunti. What Bhagavatam presents is the pure devotional heart of Kunti. What the Mahabharata presents is the law of life, how to respond to the law of life. So when we integrate Gita and Bhagavatam, you find the Pandavas, living in the real world, but living in the world of Vaikuntha Chetana, the Braja Chetana, the harmony between Karmapati and the Parapati, the Parakiya Bhav, was beautifully practiced by the Pandavas. And that is what the definition and the process of Adhyatma, Krishna consciousness and spirituality. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Priya Chaitanya, anybody?
Yeah. Those who have questions, they can either raise their hand or you can post it in the chat.
Yes.
Yes. Prabhu, you can unmute.
or write the question on the chat. That's easier.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Thank you, Pulki. Whenever we hear you, it's always a enlightening new thing. I would like to ask that, as you have mentioned, Krishna never, uh, interfered in the social order, whether in Vrindavan or any other place, in Dwarka or any other place. But we nowadays see that all the governments, uh, they try to destabilize other governments. And, one of the ways to do in India is to speak against the social order which we have as Varnashrama. And this is seen as one of the ways to break the, Indian communities. There is a lot of, enmity between the castes now. So how this can be, uh, how we can unite people if they are going to be separated on the social order, if they can work at different levels. So how this can be, this Varnashrama, how this can be, unified, how it is unifying. That is the general question.
That's what I said. In the marriage recently happened in Mumbai, all parties were there, all ideologies were there, RSS was also there, NCP was also there. So, and except the workers who get agitated, they were not there. Those who exploit the workers. So it is again, as long as there is ignorance amongst the ordinary people, and that will continue to remain, like somebody said, the political idea and the governance idea, they're always opposite to each other. No? Right. Even the Hindu party, which we always vote for them, right? At least I voted. But if you see, the election championing is different and governance is different. Governance is more socialistic ideas, right? So one has to be, why education is important? Education is important because anybody who speaks about caste division, using the wrong concept of the scripture, having a wrong narrative, if they have the larger narrative, we have the better narrative, not better narrative, the narrative which they have the greater chance of speaking, then the ordinary people will always follow that. And therefore it is important that one should understand the Shastras properly and continue to speak the narrative. Therefore it is a continuous battle of Kurukshetra. And if you can help yourself, help others, and those who are helped, they will try to live a life of integration rather than life of social disorder. That's a constant battle. It doesn't happen, agitating on a negative energy is much easier. And making people educated is a long journey. You got it? This is always the reality. Division is not the modern thing. Always there. How to forgive oneself for the past mistakes, because many times the problems stop us to go further. Plus you are saying dharmic people must be powerful. But say Dharma Shastra say Brahmin to remain poor, plus how to follow Sadharma present context. No, Dharma Shastras do not say Brahmin should remain poor. Dharma Shastra said the Brahmin should remain contented in regards to resources. But in regards to knowledge, it never said they should be contented. They should always seek more and more. Jigyasa has to be there. Poverty has been condemned in the Manu Samhita for all. Nobody promotes poverty. This is a wrong understanding. What is promoted is simplicity. Simplicity is not synonymous to poverty. Hungry and fasting, they are totally different from each other. If somebody is hungry on the Nirjala Ekadashi, One cannot say, oh, it's good to glorify. But one should be realistic also. If somebody is hungry, they're hungry. They don't get the inspiration, wow, I fasted. No. Now, fasting is done by those people who have enough resources to eat. When they fast, they feel victorious. They feel nourished. So therefore, it is important. Confidence and Shraddha, as we were discussing, both are very much required. Humility without confidence gives rise to limitless depression. And confidence without Shraddha, humility, gives rise to arrogance. One becomes very narcissistic. Thank you for this session on śaraṇāgati. You said that Krishna never breaks the social order. But when Krishna protected Prahlad that killed his father, that made Prahlad the king at such tender age. Does that not break the social order? How much Prahlad tried. It was not Prahlad's problem. It was not Krishna's problem. It was Hiranyakashipu's problem. Prahlad Maharaj never ever disobeyed his father. Never disregarded his father. He had a different opinion. Please understand. Having a different opinion from your superior is not breaking the social order. No. आप अपने वरिष्ठों को, you respect your elders, that doesn't mean that you are blind to their limitations also. There is a facility for samvad in the Shastras. So please do not misunderstand between disrespecting and having an opinion. So Prahlad had a different opinion. So Hiranyakashipu was the one who chose to kill Prahlad Maharaj. So Krishna came to protect him because he wanted to make the words of Narad Muni come true. Because Narad Muni had told that the great devotee will appear, Indra, do not touch. Right? He came to make Prahlad's words come true because God is everywhere. My Lord is here also. So killing of Hiranyakashipu was a circumstantial reality. And after killing Hiranyakashipu, when Prahlad asked Lord Narsinghdev, he said, from Prahlad's side and from Lord Narsinghdev side also, what did Prahlad say? Prahlad asked for higher destination for his father. And what did Lord Narsinghdev tell Prahlad? He said, perform Shraddha for your father. Even though I have touched his body, please perform. Lord Narsinghdev did not disconnect Prahlad from his father. He asked him to perform Shraddha. He didn't say, because you are my devotee, you don't need to do all this. So please understand that Prahlad was not responsible for the death of Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu himself wanted to kill his son. To stop Hiranyakashipu from doing further papa, as a last resort, the Lord had to bring him down. It is true that when Krishna wants us to get close to him, he breaks our material attachment. And when we get detached from the materialistic ties. Again, study Pandavas' life, the life of the gopis, life of the brahmanas. Krishna did not disrupt their material life. He gives you wisdom. Yes, there is one aspect of it, but that is not the aspect. If you study, why does he come to this world? Yada yada hi dharmasya, to create proper stability. People are stable and dharmic, then they practice devotional service. If there is a disruption, there is no food, there is violence, there is disease, there is all over disruption, except somebody who is extremely evolved, others will not be able to practice spirituality. Therefore, stability and love for Krishna has to go hand in hand. There is Shastra which says that the rules, Bhishma says, powerful make their own rule. Couldn't Bhishma Dev fight on the basis of Shastra? Yeah, Bhishma Dev said, I said that in the Mahabharata, he told this to Draupadi. He said, those who are powerful, they define what is dharma, and today the power is with Duryodhana. he couldn't fight them because he had bound himself. Nobody had bound him. He bound himself to be subservient of the king of Hastinapur. And therefore, because of that crime, one great Sri Vaishnava mentioned that Bhishma Dev, for apparent contradictions in regards to this mundane vows causing so much of pain to the Pandavas, allowed so many arrows on his bodies. That was prayashchitta for him. And eventually that arrows were taken away. So yes, it is the truth that from the pure dharmic perspective, his vrata was counterproductive in regards to dharma, but also Krishna used Bhishma Dev. If Bhishma Dev had taken the side of the Pandavas, then the polarization would have not happened so clearly. By joining the Kurus, Bhishma created the good and bad very clear so that dharma, shastra, dharma could be established. Yeah, therefore he chose not to fight. If you are getting detached from materialistic people, does that mean our path towards Krishna is opening up while we are practicing Krishna consciousness? Their detachment, you cannot break your relationship with your family, your responsibilities, your duties, right? So that struggle of evolving, and again, if you study the definition of bhakti, is becoming more and more evolved, more and more developing affection for Krishna while performing one's duties. Imagine Krishna, Arjuna killing one Akshayani, two Akshayani Saina in one day. What kind of duty is that? Nobody has such kind of duty. Nobody can claim, oh my God, my work is so bad. Yes, it's relatively bad, but when you compare to what Arjuna had to go through, Arjuna doesn't question his affection for Krishna. It's painful. He was reluctant. He was bound by feelings, but then he did his duty. How to follow Swadharma principle in the world where material institutions try to standardize people's disposition? It becomes quite late till one realizes that then how to still continue karma in mode of Krishna. Again, whenever you get to know, it's slowly, little by little. This is the modern time, especially last 100 years. Most people work based on apad dharma. They continue to remain apad dharma, but apad dharma doesn't give us satisfaction. Therefore, when we learn, slowly, use some of your time to understand your swadharma and practice. How to practice swadharma in a temple setting? That is happening now slowly, everywhere. Unless people do that, whether it is temple or institution, working institution, it does not give rise to greater community. You said that following your higher authority is not disrupting the social order. One can have difference of opinions even with the higher authority. But then in Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON, we hear the culture of following higher authority. And if we don't follow that higher authority, it is like listening to our mind and chances. So how to correlate what you said in real context? No, it's not very confusing, not conflicting. If your higher authority is speaking something which is socially disrupting, there is a tendency of exploitation. This is very important to understand. Any spiritual organization have gone through this, whether it is ISKCON or somebody else also. So therefore, one of the most important part is to make oneself wise. Or then people go to other extreme. Oh, I know everything, therefore they blast, they slander, all the all the devotees, right? We see that some even 3-year-old, 4-year-old devotees, talking about this guru, that happened, this guru, this happened, making videos, so that is also so dangerous, thinking they are Arjun, right? Even if you have an issue, where to address, how to address, that is very important. So as I said, critical thinking does not mean slanderous opinions presented in a public domain. At the same time, when you see something which is not desirable, not correct, if you do not have the facility of Vidura to speak up, at least like Pratikami, you can tell, Baba, I don't agree with this, but what can I do? No, he told Draupadi, I don't agree, this is not good, right? He did not go around and telling again Duryodhan because he knew that he will be slaughtered. So not because of that. One is etiquette requires when we have some damage is being done, it has to be addressed properly, systematically, not in a public domain, making an Insta post, making big social media videos, that is not proper. So therefore, intellectually independent but culturally dependent. That policy always keeps one very safe and steady. Thank you for your kind attention. We will meet again. Hare Krishna. अच्छा इधर भी आया था क्या? Sorry, I did not say that. Thank you.